federal government is too big and it spends too much, and the American people get it. Last year, we saw what clearly was bipartisan abuse of the earmark process. And I'm very proud that the Republican Study Committee, Leader Boehner, and a lot of people, not only those who were behind me, but a lot of people who were not here, stepped up last fall and said we need to have accountability, we need to have transparency, disclosure, openness, and enforceability to rectify that bipartisan abuse of the earmark process. We passed it. We passed it in the House last fall. At that time, Speaker Pelosi and the Democratic leadership described it as a sham. And when they won the majority after the election, what is it they said they were going to do? They were going to put into place responsible reforms on the issue of earmarks, when in fact they went 180 degrees from the transparency, accountability, disclosure, and enforceability that we implemented last fall. And now, finally, thanks to the leadership of John Boehner and the fact that this strong, solid Republican team stood together in behalf of the American people, we are seeing the kind of victory that is absolutely imperative for us to continue to have.
Well, this is an important victory for taxpayers today. And while we've won this battle on earmark transparency and accountability, the Democrats' war against the American taxpayer is still being waged. And the Democrats are proposing to spend over $100 billion in more spending on just discretionary spending this year versus next year, versus last year. And we saw with their budget that their goal is to pass, at the very least, the second largest tax increase in American history, but most likely the largest tax increase in American history. And they're already trying to spend that money. And so while we've restored some transparency and accountability to the earmarking system, we've shut off their slush funds, they're still going to come to the floor with overspending bills. And that puts the American taxpayer on a collision course with higher taxes. And so if these higher spending bills come to fruition, that virtually guarantees that Americans are going to see a big tax increase at the end of the decade. That is why we are unified in upholding the president's vetoes on these things, so that not only today do we restore transparency and accountability to the earmarking system, we still have a lot of work ahead of us to make sure that we don't have these gross overspending bills passed into law, which makes us pay higher taxes in the future. And so this is an important battle that was won today, but the war against the American taxpayer and overspending is still not over.
One thing I think is really important to remember is that the American people spoke loud and clear, and they say, we're paying attention to what you're doing and the way you're doing it. And we as Republicans listen to that, and we're responding to that. And so what we're doing, they said, all right, you're spending too much. You don't have transparency in what you're doing. We don't want deals made in the dark of night or that we can't see. And so we responded to that. They're also paying attention to what the Democrats said they do and what they're doing. And that's been very, very clear this week. So the messages are out there. Depends on what lessons are learned. And we are saying, we're responding. We're going to be upfront. We're going to cut the spending. We're also going to let the American people know how we're doing things.
Questions?
What is the deal?
Typically, there have not been any earmarks in the Homeland Security bill in the past, at least through House passage. And even at the end of the day, I think last year's Homeland Security bill had 5 or 6 in them. Secondly, and so there will be no changes to the Homeland Security bill. On the Military Quality of Life Appropriation bill, these are construction projects at military bases. These are scrubbed by the Pentagon and frankly driven by the Department of Defense. And so there will be no changes to that bill as is. The remaining 10 appropriation bills will include a list of earmarks. Secondly, the enforceability is almost identical to what we had last year. Members can pose a point of order on the consideration of a conference report that have earmarks that have been airdropped during the conference that weren't in either the House or Senate bill. Secondly, members will have enforceability on the House side in terms of a point of order on the consideration if the list of earmarks aren't there or there's a certification that there are no earmarks, but there are earmarks. And so the enforceability provisions that we had last year will be back in place.
Peter Boehner, your whole team fought for this principle of transparency on earmarks, but as you know, as particularly some of your conservatives know, that this tool of trying to challenge earmarks on the floor has never really worked very well. How is this going to improve the system, given the history in which these floor votes?
Well, I think sunlight is the best disinfectant, and the fact that there will be a list of these earmarks and who authored them and who asked for them, all that will be out in the public. That in and of itself will go a long way in reducing the number of earmarks that don't pass the straight face test. But beyond that, it gives members a real opportunity to see what the earmarks are, to do their own homework, and if there are egregious earmarks that are included, I think you can expect a fight.
Now, would the earmarks be included in the bill before it goes to the floor, or would it be?
Typically, it's been included in the committee report.
Okay, so this is kind of what Obi was saying would happen. I mean, the earmarks would be listed
No.
for 30 days.
No. Well, no.
So it'll go. So what about the bills that have already been passed out of committee, like interior? Okay.
We expect that those 10 bills, some of them would have to go back to committee to include that list.
And what happened with the tax bill?
There was this agreement centers around the appropriation bills. As I said earlier, the fight over having the same kind of transparency and accountability on authorization bills and tax bills will continue.
How do you define earmark in an authorization bill? I mean, isn't the whole idea that it is authorizing or allowing it? Can you just kind of clarify, please?
Well, but you could, in an authorization bill, you can have members requesting some small program for X, Y, or Z. In some tax bill, you could have a very narrowly targeted tax provision that affects one company, or maybe it affects 10 companies. And so we had in our earmark rule last year, we required that these types of earmarks in authorization bills or tax bills be listed, and the enforceability provisions that we now have on the appropriation bills, we had also for the authorization on tax bills.
Now, is that part of the resolution that you offered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we'll continue to fight for the resolution that we introduced several days ago.
Make references to, Mr. Brown, make references to a brief process in the past on a bipartisan effort. Is all of this part of your effort to gain back the American trust, considering there was a massive expansion of government under Republican control of the House and Senate? I mean, is this part of you getting back into the good graces?
Elections have consequences. All right? Republicans lost. And one of the reasons that we lost is that people thought we had lost our way. They didn't think we were fiscally responsible enough. They thought there was too much wasteful spending. Let me tell you what. We heard what the voters had to say. We put our earmark reforms in place last September. I would like to have done it sooner last year, as most of you know. But I'm glad we got it in place. But elections have consequences, and part of it is that our members, as a way of earning back our majority, are going to show the American people that we know what fiscal responsibility means. We know what controlling wasteful spending means. And I think that the actions that we've engaged in this week will go a long way in helping show the American people we're serious about what they said last November.